Let me introduce you to my first guest this afternoon. Jonathan Davies is a well-known voice on the programme. Jonathan is a wealth manager from Hertfordshire. He's also a regular member of our business panel, and he is a Scot. Jonathan, good afternoon to you.
Oh, hi, Rob.
Well, welcome, Jonathan. It appears the Scottish referendum issue won't be put to bed anytime soon. Scotland doesn't want to leave the EU. We are leaving the EU. Would Scotland, Jonathan, be better off without us?
They would if, and only if, they stayed independent, both of Westminster and of Brussels. If the move was to be independent of of Westminster, and then they became dependent upon Brussels, then no, Scotland would not be better off.
Why not?
Because they would have the same issues that we in the United Kingdom have as a result of the EU. We've got all the millions of ridiculous regulations. They would be Edinburgh would be a county council of Brussels as opposed to an independent state. Were it truly independent, Scotland would have an amazing future.
Jonathan, I know you're aware of Brexiteer, but which laws have ever been imposed on us by Brussels?
I take it that's a joke, Rob.
No, seriously.
80% of our laws have been coming from Brussels. Of course, that has slowed down drastically. It was heading for 100%. So, that is an amazing question.
Not really. I mean, certainly for younger listeners, they might say, well, because they're not interested in kind of an old-fashioned view. They might think, well, I know from free on my mobile phone, I've got access-free roaming to the whole of Europe. That's pretty good. I quite like that.
Whenever that one comes up, what I say to that is, well, hold on a minute. By giving up access-free roaming on your mobile phone, instead you get a little thing called democracy. I'll go with the latter, thanks.
Okay, so you want Theresa May's style of democracy. Look, the EU Remain campaign was always stronger together. Can't the same be said for England and Scotland having the same tie? Stronger together.
We see that this is one of my original arguments as to why the United Kingdom should have Brexited, and I certainly hope that we do so, because it hasn't happened yet. Because when people are governed by a faraway government, the government takes less and less heed of the people. Thus, we have been largely, increasingly, governed by Brussels, and indeed unelected folk in Brussels. Thus, the Brussels folk don't take much heed of us. Similarly, in America, you got Washington on the far east of America. Doesn't really care what happens to the rest of America. What it cares about is the Washington folk. So Scotland is currently governed by Westminster. If, however, the Scottish people were governed by Edinburgh, then I can tell you Scotland would have a much better opportunity of prosperity and indeed democracy, because when the government is close to the people, the government needs to listen to the people.
Jonathan, when we had that Scottish referendum, 4.2 million electorate, I think, and there was a vote to remain in the Union, because at that time we were still in the EU, but Scotland voted very much for Remain when it came to the EU referendum. There is a problem here that will not go away. Theresa May going to Scotland and making speeches about the SNP should address their priorities such as health and education. I think health and education in Scotland, they're actually substantially better than they are in the UK, in England.
My view, for what it's worth, is that the socialist governments that Scotland has had for years, if not decades, have ruined Scotland, particularly since quasi-independence since the last 15, 20 years ago. My view, for what it's worth, is that within a few years, or maybe a couple of elections, of Scotland becoming independent of Westminster, and as I say, remaining independent of Brussels, the electorate would get rid of the socialists, they would bring back free marketers, capitalists, and Scotland has the opportunity then to thrive as an independent state in the far northwest of Europe. It has the global language of English. Its entrepreneurial abilities are second to none. Its higher education is second to none, as it happens.
It's outstanding, in fact.
It's got all the oil. Scotland could be amazing given the right conditions.
Taking the politics out of this, what do you think the people of Scotland want? Because I think there are a lot of people in the UK, there will some who will say good riddance, but most actually can't imagine the Union without Scotland.
It seems to me that actually it's not as clear-cut as whether either Theresa May or Nicola Sturgeon would have us believe. Although the SNP is overwhelmingly in charge in Scotland, it seems to me that actually probably it's pretty divided, half and half, between those who want to be governed by Westminster and those who prefer to be governed by Edinburgh. I do believe that it actually is appropriate that following Brexit, so that's in about a couple of years' time, it would be appropriate for Scotland to have another referendum because the prior referendum was prior to the Brexit referendum. So once the UK leaves the EU, then yes, Scotland should have another referendum because the situation has changed entirely.
Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Davis, Wealth Manager from Hertfordshire, so as you can tell, a very proud Scot.